Good morning, this is World News in TVP World. I'm Anna Kalczyńska. The United States has resumed intelligence sharing and military support for Ukraine. This is a direct result of the ceasefire deal negotiated yesterday in Jeddah between Ukraine and the United States. The ball for any truce now is in Russia's court. Following 8 hours round of talks in coastal city of Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, the outcome brought new momentum to ceasefire negotiations. In response to the breakthrough, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy commented on the 30-day ceasefire proposal deal.
Our Ukrainian proposal for this meeting with the Americans included 3 key points: securing silence in the skies, no missiles, bombs or long-range drones, silence at sea, and real trust-building measures in the ongoing diplomatic process. This means, first and foremost, the release of prisoners, our military personnel and civilians, and the return of Ukrainian children who were taken to Russia. The American side understands our arguments and accepts our proposals. I want to thank President Trump for the constructive nature of our team's discussions.
President Donald Trump has said that he hopes Russia will agree to the ceasefire plan drawn up by American and Ukrainian officials. Speaking to reporters, Trump said there will be a U.S. meeting with Russia in the coming days and that he would invite Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelenskyy back to the White House.
Ukraine, ceasefire. Ukraine, ceasefire. Just agreed to a little while ago. Now we have to go to Russia and hopefully President Putin will agree to that also, and we can get this show on the road. We can get this horrible war where 2,000-3,000 soldiers a week, every week, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 sometimes. I get the reports, and they're not American soldiers. They're Ukrainian and they're Russian. But people are being killed outside of that. People are being killed in the cities as things explode throughout the cities. And we want to get that war over with. So I think it's a very big, I think it's a big difference between the last visit you saw at the Oval Office and this. So that's a total ceasefire. Ukraine has agreed to it, and hopefully Russia will agree to it. We're going to meet with them later on today and tomorrow, and hopefully we'll be able to wipe out a deal. But I think the ceasefire is very important. If we can get Russia to do it, that'll be great. If we can't, we just keep going on and people are going to get killed, lots of people.
NATO Chief Mark Rutte has praised U.S. President Donald Trump for what he described as a breakthrough in talks over ending the war in Ukraine.
Here I would side with President Trump. First of all, I want to really note the fact that thanks to him there has now been a breakthrough when it comes to Ukraine in terms of starting talks with both the Russians and the Ukrainians. That is important. It's good that the French and the Brits have taken initiative that when a peace deal or a ceasefire would happen in Ukraine, that there will be this issue of security guarantees. One way to do that would be European troops in Ukraine, but there could also be other ways to do this. I think President Trump is right that before you can keep a peace, you first need to have the peace. And the peace is not yet there.
Top European Union officials have reacted to the outcome of the peace talks between the United States and Ukraine. The proposal was welcomed by Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk and the head of EU Commission, Ursula von der Leyen.
It seems like the Americans and Ukrainians have taken an important step towards peace, and Europe stands ready to help reach a just and lasting peace.
We welcome today's news from Jeddah on the US-Ukraine talks, including the proposal for a ceasefire agreement and the resumption of US intelligence sharing and security assistance. This is a positive development that can be a step towards a comprehensive, just and lasting peace for Ukraine. The ball is now in Russia's court. The EU is ready to play its full part, together with its partners, in the upcoming peace negotiations.
The Russians do not negotiate in good faith unless they are forced to, said the former U.S. ambassador to Poland, Daniel Fried, speaking to TVP World. He also added that Ukrainians have a point in rejecting deals with Russia. Previously, authorities in Moscow failed to honor a ceasefire, which was the first step of the Minsk agreements signed in 2014.
The Russians did not honor the ceasefire, which was the first step of the Minsk Accords. So the Ukrainians have a point. The Russians do not negotiate in good faith unless they are forced to. And the question is, will Putin realize that if he violates the trust of Trump, however misplaced we may think it is, does he realize that if he does that, the Trump's reaction may be very harsh? That realization, if Putin has it, may be what drives Putin to accept a ceasefire. I don't think a ceasefire is necessarily bad for Ukraine at all. Both sides need it. The question of any ceasefire that is longer term is, what about security for Ukraine? And Ukraine cannot be simply left out in the cold.
In the meantime, overnight, the Russian army launched a series of attacks against the Ukrainian Donetsk region, killing at least 4 people and wounding 5. According to the regional governor, Russian forces used drones, artillery and bombs to carry out attacks on Molocharska, Pokrovsk and Rodynskie. Among the casualties of the attack are 2 teenagers aged 11 and 13. 2 women in their 50s died in severe injuries from the attack. Responding to the strikes, the governor of the Donetsk region, Vadim Filashkin, appealed to civilians to evacuate their homes. At the same time, Filashkin turned to parents and said that if they don't want to evacuate, they should at least send their children to a safe place. Over the past 3 years, Russian forces have regularly targeted villages and cities in the Donetsk region, often resulting in civilian casualties. Wednesday is shaping up to be an extremely busy day for Polish state officials. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andrzej Sybiha is traveling to Warsaw to meet with his Polish counterpart Radosław Sikorski. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk will meanwhile visit Turkey, and Defense Minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz will head to France. In Warsaw, the Ukrainian Foreign Minister will brief Minister Sikorski on he will be briefed on initial agreements between Ukraine and the US in Saudi Arabia. Asked about Poland's expectations for the talks, which are to focus on bilateral relations and the path to peace, Sikorski said that Polish diplomacy works for just peace, where the rights of the victim of aggression are upheld. And that's quote. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk will visit Turkey for talks with President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan. Polish and EU security will be at the top of the agenda. Everything indicates that Turkey is ready for this, Tusk said, highlighting that discussions will focus on how Ankara can increase its participation in Europe's regional security efforts. In France, Polish Defense Minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz will meet with his French, German, Italian and British counterparts to discuss further support for Ukraine. The 5 ministers will meet at Val-de-Grâce in Paris. The situation in Romania has calmed down after yesterday's protests in Bucharest. The Romanian court has upheld the decision to bar far-right candidate Călin Georgescu from running on presidential elections. Georgescu won the cancelled first round of the vote in November, and now he has appealed to his voters to peacefully show that their voice matters. Hundreds of people protested against the court's decision in Bucharest on Tuesday evening. Now the decision to ban Călin Georgescu's candidacy is final and cannot be challenged further. Georgescu has refused to endorse any other candidate in the presidential race, telling his supporters to, quote, follow their conscience. The first round of presidential elections in November was cancelled due to the winner Călin Georgescu's undeclared funding and suspicion of Russian interference in his favor.
And after everything that happened today at the Constitutional Court in the last few months, I tell you that I will stand firm in my fight for freedom, democracy, peace and dignity. If you want to support any person by signing new candidate lists, please do it as your conscience dictates. It seems that in these moments democracy and freedom are taking their last breath, and that is why we need now, more than ever, to show democratically and peacefully that our choice matters until the last moment. So yes, we were also wrong to leave 35 years to everyone else, the European Union for money, NATO for defence, and the United States of America to save us even from the wrong election outcomes. This is how we have come to depend on others, and now we find ourselves unable to decide for ourselves.
Greenland's pro-business opposition Democratic Party holds a clear lead after most votes were counted. The elections in the Danish territory were closely watched by the entire world and were dominated by US President Donald Trump's pledge to take over the island. The Democratic Party won over 29% of the votes after 90% of the ballots have been counted. It marks a large increase from their 2021 result, when the group managed to get some 9% of the votes. The party advocates for a slow approach to independence from Denmark, and behind them, with over 24% of the votes, is the Nalerak Party, a movement supporting swift independence from authorities in Copenhagen. Meanwhile, the ruling Inuit Ataqatigiit party placed third, receiving just over 21% of all votes. Their result is a far cry from their 2021 outcome, when over 37% of the islanders registered to vote chose this party. The European Union has announced it will impose counter-tariffs on 26 billion euros worth of US goods next month. The move is in response to US tariffs on steel and aluminum. In a statement on Wednesday, the European Commission informed the public it will end the current suspension of tariffs of US products on April 1st and will also put forward a new package of countermeasures on US goods by mid-April. The EC also added, however, that it is ready to engage in meaningful dialogue with the United States side. And that's it in this edition of World News, but please stay tuned to TVP World for more. World Talks are coming just right after.